One of the most common complaints or struggles that I hear from my clients and my followers is that, well, Danny, it's winter and I can't do any of the circadian stuff because the sun's not out, so I'm not getting any benefits. Or the sun isn't strong enough and it's too cold, so there's no benefits for me to be outside in winter. And this is actually, luckily, not true. So I know I live in Austin, Texas, and before this, I lived in Florida. And I know that I have a nicer, easier winter than many people. However, I am excited to share that my guest today, Ismail Najim, and I are going to talk about the fact that winter, despite it being really cold and brutal, you still get all of the elements that you need to not only survive but to thrive. If we think about it, our ancestors thrived in these climates and they were outside a lot of the time. And so we're going to see how a lot of our modern comforts and practices can keep us really stuck and getting in this cycle of getting really sick every winter, or feeling like garbage, or having a low mood and seasonal affective disorder. And we're going to talk to you about how to surpass this and how to change these different dietary and lifestyle practices in your exercise routine to accommodate winter and to squeeze all of the benefits out of winter, and also how that changes in the summer. The summer, it is likely way easier for you to be healthier and more robust and more vibrant. There's a lot more light. It feels a little bit easier, but there's also nuances there as well. And so we're going to dive into all of these today, and we're going to also talk about how this is going to affect your energy levels, your metabolism, your blood sugar. We're going to make different considerations for different hormones. And at the end, we talk about testosterone, which is something that I haven't talked about on this podcast at all. And I think that some of what we talk about is really going to surprise you and also help you realize this is easier than you think. And I loved this conversation with Ismail. I thought that he brought a really easy to understand way of approaching complex topics like quantum and circadian biology. And so, Ismail is a scientist, educator, and certified functional and nutritional medicine practitioner. And he's got a great Instagram at the 360 upgrade, and he's got a bunch of courses. So definitely check him out. He also has a testosterone course. So if you are a male, or you are a female listening and you have a husband, or you know of someone who is, needing some of this testosterone support, I'm happy to be able to direct people his way, because he just is a wealth of knowledge, and I think you're really going to love this episode. So let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Light Up Your Metabolism podcast. I'm so excited to welcome my guest today, Ismail. He is from the 360 Upgrade. You guys have to follow him on Instagram. I have been a follower of his for a while, and I absolutely love his content. I think he provides really helpful, easy to understand and digest content that is really supportive for all this circadian stuff. And so, Ismail, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Danielle.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. So, I'd love to start with getting to know you and your story of how you found quantum and circadian health and what got you here today.
Yeah, sure, sounds good. So, my journey in health really started when I was probably 17, around 17 years old. Back in those days, I really felt like I had the worst in the DNA lottery, or the health lottery, if I may say. So, I was quite young. I was still like in school, and I really felt low energy. When I remember when I used to sleep, I would wake up. I had TMD, which is like you heard here. I didn't sleep well. My energy was low. I was losing hair. And I was just like looking into the future of life. And I was like, oh my God, I have all these years in front of me, and this is my fate.
Yeah.
And I had, like by then I had this mentality that everything is in your DNA, and
Mm-hmm.
you get like the DNA lottery, and that's it. And I had
Yeah.
both my parents are doctors, and so like they're very much into this mindset, etc. And it was quite a difficult time, and I just like at some point I started like rejecting that idea. I said I have to find a way to change this mindset. Otherwise, like my life looks shit, right? Like it looks bad. I will be like, and I have all of these years in front of me. So this is when I started shifting my mindset, and actually I wanted to go do medicine, but I refused to do it at the end because of this mindset that everything is just like drugs, and you have like diseases, and then we're just going to help you treat them. So I shifted and I went into science rather, and that's when I started looking into like ancestral health. The first big insight for me was epigenetics, right? Epigenetics meaning that whatever you do in your daily life, whatever you eat, the practices you have, the way you sleep, all of this has an impact on your DNA. It defines how your DNA is used way more than the DNA itself, right? It's like a reading of your DNA that has much more impact. And I thought that this was such an empowering, like thought.
Yeah.
And then from there, nutrition, and then from there, like I kept, like going through the layers of the onion of health until I
Yes.
started looking into like everything around quantum health.
Amazing. And so, what did you see when you started applying these quantum and circadian principles to your health? Did you notice any changes? Because for me, I had been doing a lot of stuff. I lived in Florida, which is a very sunny place. And, so I don't really have my own story too much of how the quantum and circadian stuff helped my health because I was already doing quite well. I will say
Hmm.
the one thing that I really do notice, well, I do notice it helps my mood a lot. Um, but also I noticed it helped my eyes. So I
Oh,
had LASIK surgery, which I know is not good, but I'm going to have to just biology of belief it and that just know that believe that my eyes are going to be okay and that, all the right things are happening. But my eyesight
yeah.
wasn't that good after the LASIK surgery. I needed glasses to drive at night. And when I would look at close stuff, it was like a little bit blurry. And now
Hmm.
that never happens. I don't even know where those glasses are. Like I use my blue blockers to drive at night, actually, non-prescription. But for you, were there any benefits that you could tie to some of these principles you started applying?
Yeah, of course. So, first of all, as I was saying you before we started, I spent part of my life in Morocco, which
Hmm.
is in many ways like Florida. You have sunlight all the time, you spend so much time outdoors, so you get the benefits of like quantum and circadian rhythm by design. And
Yes.
then when I was a kid, I moved to France and then to the UK. And so in the European, like in Europe, it's much different. You have less sunlight, you spend less time outdoors. So I did like get a dip in my mood, a dip in my energy, and that's when I started, like losing my hair. Like it just
Mm,
felt like my biology was not responding well,
mm,
and it took me a long time to get to quantum health because I started, like with the same, I think the same journey that everyone goes through, which is, like you
yeah.
start with nutrition first,
Yep.
with the Western
Weston A. Price.
A
Yeah.
price, all of that, like
How do we
initial
cook over
peel,
there?
which is like already like a big thing. You're like, oh my god, butter is good. Okay, wow, let me look at this foie gras. Okay, I'll do it. So I started with that, and actually, like I went through all of the stages, right? Like from
Hmm.
like the biology of belief, all of those pieces, and I was hitting a plateau, especially like during winter. I think that quantum biology really kicked in for like how I was feeling in winter because I was in London and I feel great in summer. I have my nutritious food, etc. But then when winter comes, I still had that dip in energy. I still had like that difficulty sleeping because you don't have as much light outside, etc. And that's when I started peeling into the quantum health space and the mitochondria and circadian rhythm, and then how you can actually take care of that even in a winter mindset. And so to me, it really helped me break through that plateau of energy and also helped me break through that, like that situation where I feel great 6 months of the year and then awful the other 6 months, even with food and diet and exercise and all of that.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful segue into the topic that I want to start talking about with you, which is how can people start feeling better in winter? And first off, maybe we could say, why do people feel so bad in winter? we talked about the light. People are like, well, I'm inside and it's cold. But is that the reason why they're not feeling well? Because it's cold out. Like, is that a reason for not feeling well? Maybe we could start there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. We can get a bit philosophical here for a minute, but I think that one of the things that really defines our modern society today is that we really like stability. We like stability, and if you think about it, in the way our economy works, we want growth all the time, and we
Hmm.
hate, we refuse crisis. Um, we want stability in your productivity. We want stability in temperature, in food. There's like
Hmm.
that idea that I can have like the same life all the time,
Right.
and
Same diet, same workout plan, same schedule, like 365 days a year. That's what we want. It's like, I'm going to
yeah.
do this program and I'm going to do the same thing all the time. Yes, I can absolutely see that in our society.
And I think like the globalization of information makes this like even more right, because like you're
Yeah.
hearing like someone speak from like probably Florida, and you're in London, you want to apply that, and so like everyone now like it's kind of like normalized.
Yeah.
And in winter, I think what happens is that we are like trying to live in this perpetual summer, because it's normal. Humans, they like summer, we like light. I mean,
Yeah.
summer in itself is full of positive energy and positive emotions, and so we want to keep that summer even with like through winter. So in London, you have heating indoors, you have your like you just like keep living your normal life until 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. with the lights on. And what happens is there is just a disconnect between what your body thinks is happening and what is actually happening. You have light, but you're missing infrared, right? You're missing UV. You
Hmm.
have heat, but you don't have like the food that goes with heat. And so like these disconnects between our like what our body receives as information is actually like it is actually quite hard. Like you're spending most of your time indoors, and then you go out for 5 minutes and it's cold. Your body
Hmm.
doesn't adapt, and so all of this creates this discomfort, and like that can transform into health issues in winter.
Yeah. So being inside is obviously a big issue, but we don't live in igloos and we don't live in tents outside when it's winter. So I guess, what are some things that are really important to know about how we thrive in winter?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are really many layers when you look at thriving in winter. And we could almost look at them as, like there is a side about nutrition, which is,
Hmm.
I think, like what resonates a lot with people, because a lot of people are already looking into their nutrition. There is a side about the temperature that you expose yourself into. If we take a
Hmm.
step back, we're trying to get our body to run our winter program. Because when we run our winter programs, that's when we are aligned with our environment, with the
Hmm.
lack of sun, with the
Hmm.
temperature. And that's when our body thrives, because it's running the right song. It
Yeah.
reads the room, and it runs the right song. And so
Okay.
part of it is seasonal eating. And there are so many reasons this is important. We
Hmm.
have our metabolism actually changes in winter. We become a bit more insulin resistant because we have less sunlight. Um, we become also better with managing fat, right? And our
Hmm.
body and mitochondria is better at using fat. So these are important considerations. We're very bad at um, getting rid of deuterium, and deuterium is like the heavy side of water, which when it changes just slightly, it can really make your mitochondria a lot less efficient. When there is a lot of sun, we can deal with deuterium, and deuterium happens to be in high carb food. When we are in winter, our body is less good with deuterium, and
Hmm.
nature does things well. There is less carbs around us. So there are these aspects of seasonal food and nutrition that we need to look at. But there are also a lot of other aspects, including how to get enough electrons in an indoor life when you're
Hmm.
spending time inside in winter. There is how to make sure that you manage the temperature transition and actually make your body cold adapted when
Hmm.
you're in winter, and get the benefit the benefits of that, because there are so many benefits for your mitochondria.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are so many things that you can quote there.
Yeah, let's kind of go into each of those topics. So you started talking about the nutrition, why
Mhm.
it's important in winter. So we have a different sort of type of metabolism in the winter. So we talked about deuterium. Is there anything you want to expand on there?
Yeah, so actually, taking a step back, deuterium is really hydrogen, which is the atom that makes up our water
Hmm.
molecules, comes in three forms. There is the form with one proton. There is one with one proton, one neutron, which is heavier. And
Hmm.
actually, when you have this heavy form, which is like we find it in very small amounts, maybe 150 parts per million,
Hmm.
so it's quite like a minute amount, but it actually changes the shape of water when you have
Hmm.
that heavy hydrogen. And when you have that shape of water that changes, actually all of the uh, physical elements or the physical properties of water change, right?
Yeah.
And because we're talking about such a small scale, water is important for our mitochondria. It's important for like all of those small reactions that happen in our body. When you start having more of this heavy water, your mitochondria becomes less efficient, and your physical reaction or biophysical reactions become less efficient. And because we're talking at the quantum level, a small change can lead to a huge impact. And so
Mm.
just going from 140 parts per million to 150 parts per million, you can really disrupt your mitochondrial energy production, the speed of your reaction, sometimes by a factor of seven. So there's like really huge impacts from a biophysical
Wow.
perspective. And the body tries to always limit the amount of deuterium, but we need some, because we need some for like getting
Mm.
life going. um, and our like nature is done well. This is again like I really believe in the fact that we don't have the answers to everything, but
Yeah.
nature has coordinated everything for us, and now we have some elements. So when you're in winter, when you're in summer, your body does very well with deuterium because you have a lot of access to ultraviolet, and
Hmm.
ultraviolet helps with getting rid of deuterium. It gives our body enough energy to actually take deuterium, put it out, and then get rid of it. And so it gives us a lot of flexibility. Deuterium is present very much in carbs, and
Hmm.
carbs, they need a lot of ultraviolet. And so there is, like that nice circle of life where we have a lot of access to ultraviolet, we have access to food that has a lot of deuterium because of ultraviolet, but we can deal with it because we have a lot of ultraviolet.
Yes.
Now this breaks down when you're eating bananas and mangoes in a place where they shouldn't grow, because you still have the deuterium from food that received a lot of ultraviolet, but you don't have the ultraviolet to be able to get rid of deuterium.
Yeah.
And so that's why it is so important to actually think about these things. And I know like so many people are like, oh my God, this is too much information. It seems like it's too stressful. Actually, it's not stressful. Like the explaining how it works goes
Mm-hmm.
into a lot of details, but
Mm-hmm.
making it practical is actually quite straightforward.
Yeah.
Look at the origin of the food you're eating. Ideally, like buy food from like a farmer's market. Don't go, and if you have to buy food, like I'm in the UK, if I have to buy food, maybe if it comes from France, it's okay. I'm
Yeah.
not going to make a fuss out of it.
Right.
But maybe Spain is not a great idea. And maybe
Yeah.
Morocco is really not a great idea because you have a
Mm-hmm.
lot more ultraviolet there.
Yeah.
So, like be smart about it, and just like look at how to make it practical, which is
Yeah.
way more straightforward than the explanation we gave now.
Yeah. So here what I do is I kind of look at, okay, if I look at some food labels and it'll say where it's grown, I'm in Texas, so I don't want to choose things that are much more south than I am. So, because I'm in the northern
Yeah.
hemisphere. So, because that would mean it required a lot more sun. So, a lot of things are grown in Mexico, and I'm even seeing a lot of things grown in Peru, which is
Mhm.
in the other hemisphere. So, it's if something is grown in Peru, that means it was summer when it was growing there, or like sometimes you'll get blueberries from Chile, and it's like that is extremely far, totally different climate than we're experiencing right now. And so you just, I start with, and I am not perfect with this, you guys. Like, I am not 100% buying from farmers markets, super 100% local, but I'm always trying my best. Just like where you look at, okay, the organic, the dirty dozen, and the clean 15, where that kind of gives you an idea. Okay, if I'm not going to get everything organic, I'm going to focus on these dirty dozen to get organic.
Mm,
So, this idea of doing the best we can, controlling what we can, but also if it's at the point where it's going to make us crazy and stressed out, then just eat the thing because that's going to be better for you than all the stress, right? So just looking at the food labels and buying the one that's closest to you. And I would argue that if you're in the northern hemisphere, buying something more north of you would be okay. If you're in the southern hemisphere, buying something more south of you would be okay because you know that. So, for example, here in Texas, if I buy something from New York, I know that my light is going to be even more than what's in New York, so that it's okay because I could
mm,
probably deplete the
mm.
deuterium from what that is. Is that making sense?
Yeah, like actually, like the northern you are, or the southern you are in the southern
Yeah.
hemisphere, and the
Hmm.
more, the less choice you have essentially.
Yes.
But I
Yes.
agree with you. Like, I mean, when you think about it, there are so many dimensions that you have to look at. So, for example,
Hmm.
myself, I'm
Hmm.
guilty. I take avocados,
Hmm.
and they come from Morocco, and I
Yeah.
like avocados, and so I get them in winter. And I dial up a bit more the sauna side of things because sauna helps with deuterium depletion as well. So like you can like switch and you have like some
Yeah.
joker and bonus points. But the idea is like just don't like make 100% of your diet
Tropical. Yeah.
exported or like
Yeah.
imported, right?
Yeah, these imported tropical fruits. Like, let's not have a diet based on imported tropical fruits. So, fruit
100%.
smoothies with like mango chunks. And I mean, I used to do this all the time. It would be like spinach, which is like loaded with oxalates, and then pineapples and mangoes and bananas. And that would be what I would be eating in the winter. And it's like, it's not a good choice because of this deuterium factor. And you mentioned that UV light helps to deplete deuterium, sauna helps to deplete deuterium. I believe sweating does. So when I was in Costa Rica, I would eat like papaya in the morning and just be walking around sweating and being like deuterium depletion walk, because it's like I would put like DDW, like deuterium depletion walk, because it just, you can easily handle it.
Exactly,
I
exactly.
believe cold exposure helps you deplete deuterium as well,
Cold exposure
right?
does, yes, it does.
Okay.
It does. It is somewhat less efficient than
Okay.
like a life where you spend time outside. Also, a lot of people don't have, like it's not like we're spending so much time outside in the cold. I mean, like when people do it, they have like maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes of,
Minutes.
of a
Yeah.
cold bath.
Yeah.
But so yes, it does help as well. So those are
Okay.
also practices that you can use and actually like when you get exposure to cold, it also improves your insulin sensitivity to,
Sensitivity.
so that's also like another factor. So yeah, like if you want to have your mango, you're gonna have to do a bit more.
Yeah, you're gonna have to spend a long time in that cold plunge. And so, does that feel complete? And you want to move on to temperature because I feel like that's a good sort of
Yeah, absolutely,
segue. Yeah,
absolutely,
about
yes,
okay.
absolutely, yeah. Like the other aspect is I think yes, so many people in winter, if you ask them, they wouldn't be able to tell you what temperature it is today, right? Like we just like
Hmm.
lost that connection, and it doesn't mean that you have to really be freezing all the time. It just means that your body needs to be slightly more aware of the temperature. And it's funny because when I go, actually, like I still go sometimes to Morocco, and winter in Morocco feels colder than winter in London, and that's because people don't heat as much. They're not like used to heating. And so what happens in
Yeah.
Morocco is that you get like a lot of sun during the day, and then
Uh-huh.
at night it's quite cold, and so in the houses you feel really cold. But that's actually good because your body is receiving that information that hey, like it's winter. So it's
Yeah.
funny enough
I have
that
a
I
blanket on my lap. I'm in Texas and it's like in the 30s here today, 40s, but but like yeah, my house isn't that heated. So I know what you're saying. Like when I go to New York, you walk inside and it's like, "Oh, it's warm in here." Right? But here it's like, "Oh my God, I can't be I don't know. It's a weird thing. I
Yeah,
mean, I
it's
was outside in a bikini today, sunning in the 40-degree weather that we're having. So I am getting like a little bit of UV and cold at the same time. But yeah, that's rare.
No, yeah, it's really like I think we where it is cold, where it is winter, and where winter is extreme, people have built so much comfort around it that you have completely lost it. And the
Mm,
idea is not to like be freezing. The idea is just for
yeah.
your body to start feeling that cold because it gives your body information to run the winter programs, but it also improves
Yes.
your mood. A lot of people have SAD, for example, like seasonal affective disorder, or the
Yes.
winter blues, which is the less acute version.
Yeah.
And the reason they have that is just because their body is not being waken up. Like one of the ways you know that someone has SAD is that their melatonin stays high in the morning and does not go down. And
Mm,
like that's a multitude of things. One, first of all, is that they're not spending time outside, even if it's winter. And actually, I mean, you probably know Danielle, but even if you have light inside your house, it's not the same as light outside. It doesn't have the same intensity. It doesn't have the same spectrum. The spectrum does not change to give your body information about the time of the day. Um, and so, like, they're missing that light component, but they're also missing the cold component. Turns out
mhm,
when you get cold exposure, it helps really well with SAT because cold wakes you up. Cold
mhm,
actually, it's funny because our body becomes more tuned to temperature from a circadian perspective during
mhm,
winter. Actually, like when you have less sunlight and when you have like cold, there is a mechanism in our brain that shuts down light and light becomes less important, and our body starts focusing more on temperature because that becomes more of a signal to our body of the time of the day. And you
yeah.
don't benefit from that if you're like having this summer life inside heated. So
Yeah.
temperature really helps with all of these things, and it helps with the insulin sensitivity, with helping wake up your body.
Mhm,
It helps you, you know, like having your body adapt to the cold and not have such huge, you know, like differences between when you're inside and when you're outside. And it helps with, you know, like preventing colds, running mitochondria on fat. So, you know, like there is a connection between the temperature your body feels and then the diet that it can take. And it can
mm,
take a winter diet when it feels more cold. So it's kind of like a chicken and
mm,
an egg.
yeah.
And we're not saying again you should go out naked all day or like not heat your house. It's just like how do you feel, like think of how do you make your house in London or in New York feel a bit more like a house in Morocco,
Mhm,
maybe like with less heat, or maybe
mhm,
like heating just one room, maybe like
mhm,
heating slightly less because you're dollar sensitive, maybe like it's taking slightly less or like it's having less layers when you're going out, and helping your body, you know, like get into that temperature, that cold temperature. And our body adapts the same way, you know, like I think we always talk in summer, hey, like you need to have um your callus, you have to like expose
yeah, your
yourself
solar
from
callus.
spring so that your body builds up that tolerance. It's kind of the same for cold. You have to start
Mhm,
exposing yourself from the fall, and you know, like not directly run into the heating from fall,
mhm,
but like keep your body feeling more and more cold. And that way your body builds up the brown fat, right? Like brown
yes.
fat is essentially fat with a lot of mitochondria, and so it's fat that's ready to heat. It's ready to like heat you up. And so like you build that capacity of having brown fat, which will feed your mitochondria, heat you up, um, make you lose fat actually, and so many other things.
Yeah, amazing. So deliberate cold exposure helps these winter programs run better. That it helps your mitochondria, it helps your insulin sensitivity, it helps your mood, it helps your motivation, and it is something that helps you to actually create these biophotons and it creates some UV light inside of us, right?
Absolutely.
So when we
Exactly.
don't have that UV light outside, cold can actually take some of the place of the UV. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Yes. Like so this is so poetic when you think about it.
Yeah.
Uh, but the fact that like when we start producing when we have like cold exposure, especially
Mm-hmm.
when you're doing like the proper cold exposure, where for 5, 10, 15 minutes you go out, if there is if there is snow, or like you get a cold bath or a cold
Mm-hmm.
shower even, like what happens there is that your body has to heat itself, right? Because there is
Mm-hmm.
cold, and so your mitochondria starts working a lot harder, and then as it is working and as it is like producing energy, that's when you actually like have a lot more electrons going through your body, not producing ATP but producing energy. Actually, like our mitochondria has a process called encoupling, where
Mm-hmm.
it starts like it starts like consuming electrons to produce heat, not to produce
Mm-hmm.
energy, not to produce ATP. And in that process, the mitochondria starts like emanating light, and that light includes the infrared, which is like the heat
The
itself.
heat.
It's
Yeah.
it's exactly the heat. It also includes the UV, and this like helps structure the water inside your body. And so it's really poetic because you become your own internal sun. Uh, in the cold, but you have to like trigger that. Like you can't be a sun without having exposure to the cold. And so yeah, I think it's a really like nice story again to close the circle of how everything gets connected.
I love that. And so I think that's a really good segue. So we talked about temperature and how if there's not a lot of UV light or no UV light in your area because it's winter, that
Mhm.
it's really important to get cold. And that cold can help take the place of some of these sort of benefits we often get from the sun, like mood boosting, immune boosting, things like that. And then when it comes to light, and the hormones that we get from light, like UV light, is the light that produces vitamin D. Now,
Yes.
that's if that's not available in the winter, like how then would our ancestors have survived this migration
Hmm.
away from the equator to areas where there was no UV light and there were no vitamin D capsules? So what has to be happening here with these with these hormones and with the increase of darkness and the absence of UV?
Yeah. So actually, there is another poesy here, because when you think about it, um, not the same intensity, but everywhere on Earth, you receive the same amount of daylight.
Yes.
Anywhere you are, anywhere
Mm-hmm.
you are. It's not the same intensity, but it's the same, like duration of
Duration of
daylight.
light. Yeah, of
Um,
sunlight. Yeah.
so this already like gives you some hints that like there is like a concept of like vitamin D being able to like stay longer, especially when you produce it through the skin. The vitamin D from the skin is different from the one we eat or the one that we get from supplements. In
Yep.
many ways, it is more water soluble.
Mm-hmm.
It like stays longer in our body, and so like there is something there about vitamin D, but there is much deeper elements to that. Actually, a lot of people try to optimize vitamin D in winter, and that might be misguided, especially when you do too much vitamin D, because we're starting to discover that melatonin and vitamin D are kind of the same sides, or like different sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Melatonin is really the hormone of darkness. Vitamin D is the hormone of light, but they have a lot of the same um, behaviors or the same processes. Actually, the melatonin can bind to the vitamin D receptor, and they kind of have like the same effects. They modulate your mitochondria, they help and modulate your immune system, uh, and they act like a hormone across the body, helping with inflammation and all of that. And so, if again, like if we're trying to hack nature
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like having vitamin D when it shouldn't be there, while actually forgetting about leveraging darkness and leveraging melatonin, which you can have plenty of in winter, that's
Yeah.
another misguided approach where we're trying to. And I think like there is a theme here, which is when you go into winter, nature gives you all you need. Your
Yes.
sunlight becomes internal, but you need cold to get it going. Your vitamin D becomes melatonin, but you need darkness to get it going. And people are like going away from these things that are natural and aligned, and they're like going to the other stuff, like trying to replace
Yeah.
back the summer and forget about the winter, like things.
Yeah. We're trying to stay inside, stay warm, and we're taking vitamin D supplements, and that's the opposite of what, and like turning, keeping all the lights so we can see longer and extend our workday and extend our busy schedules, when winter is arguably a season of rest, right? Like look at what the bears
Exactly.
do. They're hibernating. So
Exactly.
we're not as productive. And so going back to what you mentioned at the beginning of this, where you said that we want, as humans, modern humans, we want to have the same day 365 days a year. We want to take our vitamin D, and we want to like have the same workout schedule, and we want to have the same socials calendar, and we want to be just as productive at work. And we live on a very cyclical planet because it's tilted. And so it's literally because of that tilt, everything is just fluctuating all the time. And so, I mean, of course, closer to the equator, we get more consistency there.
Mhm.
But, most of us don't live right near the equator, and so there's variations. And even in equatorial regions, because living in Florida is closer, but there's typically a rainy season and a dry season,
Exactly.
right? So there are still variations
There
in
is
nature.
seasonality, 100%.
Yeah. And so I love this idea of, like what you said so beautifully, that nature gives us all we need to thrive in winter. It didn't make a mistake. It's not like, oh man, like, we, good thing we invented vitamin D so we can take this in the winter. I would argue like, don't do that. And this is not medical advice, but I would argue not to do that, and to embrace more of the darkness at night. So lighting candles, using your fireplace, incandescent bulbs, going to bed earlier, getting off your screens, making your screens red. So we're not stimulating the wrong hormone at the wrong time, which would be stimulating all these stress hormones like cortisol, which are telling our body it's
Mhm.
daytime,
Mhm.
and to lean into that darkness and less light. And of course, I understand, I am saying this, and I'm coming from a place where I don't have complete darkness. I'm not in a Scandinavian country
Of
saying this.
course.
So, for all those people who are at like these extreme latitudes in northern Canada and, Scandinavia, I understand it's much harder. Um, shorten those days, and, bring these things in the middle of the day, but allow for the rest and repair. Like, what would your ancestors have been doing up there? Like, I don't know, building a
100%.
fire, like something, but not working later into the night and flipping on more blue lights, and like just doing our, trying to get like our heart, greatest PRs in our workouts. It's like, that's not the time. Maybe switch to, yoga, mobility, like walking, different things like that,
100%.
instead of just trying to mimic this summer metabolism. So, yeah, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, and also like I mean, you made me think of an image. So I don't know if you've seen it. There is an image where there is a ball that they try to throw, and you have like two paths. There is a path which is like just simple, and there is like one which has like cycles. And actually, the path that has cycles, the
Yes.
ball goes faster. And so I think
Yes.
it's also like embracing this philosophy that like you don't need to have the same day 36 365 days a year to actually be productive.
Yeah.
Embracing like the time to rest. I guess it's like when you're training. Like, let's take something that people can understand. When you're exercising,
Hmm.
people tell you if you exercise every day, you're actually like setting yourself up for failure. You're going to be overtrained, you're going to have a lot of cortisol, and you're not going to give your body the time to rest, which is where muscles are built, which is where like the rest and repair happens. It's a
Hmm.
similar thing at a larger scale where we're talking about seasons. And actually, like, you
Yes.
can go much further when you have the ability to embrace these parts of like the year.
Yeah, beautiful. So, can we contrast this with summer and just kind
Yeah,
of speak a little bit to summer? And, we sort of alluded to some of those benefits, and, UV, and there's more light, and we can sweat and all that. Actually, sorry, before that, we have to talk about infrared. We did not talk about
of
infrared.
course,
And so let's continue the winter conversation
of
and
course,
talk about infrared, and then we'll go to summer if we haven't left anything out.
of course, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Let's do it. I think like the like this is probably the thing that people feel the least, or actually like this is the thing that people think about the least, but has quite some huge impact, which is that in winter, at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time indoors.
Hmm.
And what this means specifically is that we don't get access to a lot of the electrons that we have around us in the form of infrared when you are outside in the sun, and in the form of, like contact with the earth, or just like movement, like just piezoelectricity and being able to move. And one thing that people ignore is that infrared is present 365 days per year,
Yeah. If
whether
you want
there
to
are
be consistent with
clouds.
something, it's infrared.
Infrared is there for you. It will never leave. As soon as there is sunlight, there is
There's infrared.
infrared.
Yep.
Whether whether like it's outcast, whether it's like short day or not, you always have infrared. And
Yes.
the challenge is that we don't have access to that infrared. I think there is like one chart that I have in one of my posts that shows that actually like the time, like the amount of near infrared that people have access to from 1850 to now has kind of like plummeted. I think it decreased by 90% because people spend so much time outside.
Oh, not that we can't get it, but what we're exposed to.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Okay, I
Like
was like, we can't get
no,
this
no,
anymore because
no.
I know the magnetism's decreasing. I'm
The
like, don't tell me
the
that
sun is still
infrared is
there.
decreasing. Okay, okay,
The sun
I'm
is still
wrong.
there.
Okay,
No,
my
but
bad.
like we have, like we all of our houses are now energy efficient. One way to make your house energy efficient is that your glass, like your screens in your window, they need to reflect infrared and not let it come in, because that's how you lose heat. But
Yeah,
what this means is that you're not getting infrared from the sun when you're
yeah.
inside. In
Glass
your
blocks out a
offices,
huge percent of infrared, like
infrared
between
and
40 and
UV,
60. And UV,
100%.
yes. Hmm.
And so like all of those, like all of those important signals to your mitochondria, like infrared on your skin makes melatonin in your mitochondria, right? It makes
Hmm.
melatonin in your cells. And melatonin is probably the most important antioxidant in our biology. This is a different melatonin from the one we produce in the pituitary. This one is really this one is really the melatonin that helps with just the equation of life, the production of energy, which is a super risky business. You produce so much uh, reactive oxygen species, and you want to have melatonin there to help you, like with uh,
Mm.
the firefighting, and also with like just taming that thing. And not having access to this means that you like your body's going to be more stressed. You're going to produce more cortisol. You're going to have like all of those benefits of infrared. You're not going to have access to the structuring of water that happens in your mitochondria. All of that you don't have access to. um, and if you think about it, our ancestors, they used to, like, especially in winter, they used to have access to cold, which gives
Mm.
them internal infrared. They were like probably walking barefoot, even in
Hmm.
winter,
Hmm.
touching, like some like caves or some
Yeah,
conductive surfaces, um,
yeah,
and moving. And these are all things that we are cut off from. And probably like making fire and sitting in front of the fire, which also gives you infrared. um,
yeah.
so all of these things we miss, and infrared is probably like one of the most important things. I mean, for me, it like I use my infrared light
Hmm.
to like to supplement infrared in winter, but that's like one of the top priority from a health perspective. I can tell you when there is a day with
Yeah.
less infrared.
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the things that I think is really interesting is that if you look at all different cultures around the world,
Mhm.
so many of them have practices that involve both heat and cold. So, but if you look at like there's like Turkish hammams and Russian baths and Native American sweat lodges and Finnish saunas, and so like you can literally go and
Mhm.
look back and say like all of these cultures are bringing in warmth and it's infrared in some way. So this is a really powerful thing. And earlier you talked about the temperature and knowing what time of day it is and what season it is from the temperature. And I learned that it's important to do heat exposure towards the end of the day because that has a paradoxical cooling effect on our body, and which means that so we get hot and our body tries to cool us down, and it overshoots a little bit, and so that makes us cooler and that
Mhm.
helps support sleep. Whereas in the morning, if we do our cold exposure, then that is the coldest time of the day, is right before the sun comes up. That's going to be your coldest time of the day anyway. And then we would do our cold exposure then, and then the body's going to again try to heat us up. And then so we're warm for the day, right? So
Exactly.
is that's how you kind of use
Absolutely.
those
Like
things too?
that's one of the like, and then that would wake you up, like when you
Yeah.
get cold exposure in the morning. That's exactly this. Like actually our body goes down around half a degree down
Mm,
in at night, and then around half a degree up in the day. And when you support
mm,
that with cold, and it's paradoxical, but when you support
yeah.
that with cold in the morning and then heat in the evening, that's perfect. Like having a
Yeah.
an Epsom salt bath before you sleep is perfect. Or
Yeah.
like if you have the opportunity to use a sauna, I have a sauna that I can use home,
Yeah.
but
Right here.
exactly like that, that's like perfect, like the perfect way to sleep and get infrared at the same time.
Yeah, amazing. So you were starting to talk about grounding. And I'd made a post on this about like grounding in winter. A lot of people are like, well, I can't ground because, and they're like, they think that they can't. And I understand if you have like 8 feet of snow outside, there can be challenges,
Mhm.
but how do you help support people with getting grounded in the winter?
Yeah, so it really depends on where you live, but there is like the easy solution, which is that actually there are so many surfaces you can ground on that people are not
Hmm.
aware of. Actually, like ice is conductive, like snow is conductive, water is conductive, touching plants is conductive. So if you have the ability to like be able to touch these surfaces, then you still have access to all of the electrons that you want. And then in some cases, because it is harder to walk barefoot maybe or etc., then we need to be a bit more strategic about it. So I personally use grounded shoes, which just like allow you to get access to
Hmm.
like the ground without walking barefoot. So I like everyone makes fun of them because they look ugly.
Oh, I have some cute ones, and they're from a brand from the UK.
Okay, which one?
The Bahe brand,
Oh,
Bahe.
okay, I'll check them out. I'm using
Yeah.
the Earth Runners,
Oh,
and they're like a bit more, like hipster, let's say.
okay. These are more like gym sneakers.
I
So,
see.
but
Okay.
they also have hiking boots, which are new, and they have barefoot sneakers, which I think they're all pretty cute. Like they look like a good like a normal sneaker brand. So maybe you can update, but either
Yeah,
way,
and then
they'll
like
look good.
you always have a way, because like you can also like buy some patches that you can put on any shoes, and then they just like give
Hmm.
you access to the ground. So if you have like your preferred shoes, you can do that. And
Yeah.
I personally use also grounding mats, just
Hmm.
because it's so practical. I know that like there is a lot of debate around like whether it gives you like electric
Dirty
smog and dirty
electricity.
electricity. But I
Uh-huh.
like my experience with them is that it has been like positive more than anything else, because grounding actually also helps protect from like electromagnetic
Nice.
fields and all of those things. So all in all, I take like I actually sleep on it
Nice.
throughout the night, and I wake up amazing. So yeah, like those are like there are many ways you can get grounding, from like very natural to strategic, even in winter.
Yes. Yeah. And even just like my fence, some of the some of my fence has metal poles. Those poles are grounded.
Exactly.
All tap water from cities are required to be grounded. So
Absolutely,
the water
absolutely.
is grounded. There's this in my bathtub, there's a silver sort of like flat plate, and
You're
that
grounding
touches
then.
the pipes. And so it's like grounded. So when you're in the bath, you could be grounded by just putting your foot on that pipe, or if the water is
Absolutely.
running.
And the
So,
water is conductive, so you
yeah.
yeah, like that's
And
another
yeah, and you're
reason.
getting infrared and you're getting the electrons. So it's all this stuff sounds so complicated. It's really just knowing about where you can get these things and just being a little bit more deliberate to just add a little bit more when you can.
Exactly.
Like so many people are so stressed out about all this stuff, and it's like, okay, take a bath and put your foot on the metal plate. It's like, okay, I'll put my foot on the plate.
I can do
Like,
that. That I
okay, I could,
can.
yeah. Or it's like, if it's a nice day and it's a little cold out, like embrace it. Don't think that you like right now it's sunny. This morning they were spraying and so it was cloudy, but like it's a nice day out. Like go
Mhm.
outside. And then even if it is cloudy, we often think, oh, it's cloudy, I don't want to go outside. We need the light more
Yeah,
because we need to be out there longer because these clouds are blocking some of these rays, especially the higher intensity ones like the UVs. But I mean, it's cloudy days F up my mood big time. And so to go outside and get that
Mhm.
brightness signal,
Mhm.
it's really powerful for your mental health. And so if you live in a place where it is a lot of clouds and overcast and the sky is like white in the winter, like that's how it was in New York. I'm like, I haven't seen a blue sky in forever because the sky is just like white and gray. It was just so depressing. And it's like if you actually get outside in that weather and you take walks in the cold where you're not freezing, you're not getting frostbite, you're being safe, but you're also like getting cold. It is exhilarating. Like you feel so good afterwards. So,
100%. And those
yeah.
overcast days, they usually have more cold, which then like balances things out. Like you get a bit
Yeah.
more infrared from the cold, a bit more dopamine from the cold that you would
Yeah.
have gotten. And so like it all balances out.
I love
But I agree
that.
with you. I think that people get overwhelmed because like we
Yeah.
share all of these details. These details are interesting to understand, and to actually
Mhm.
like and understand the mechanism behind it. But from a practical perspective, you can really make it happen. And you have to embrace the philosophy that there will be a lot of stuff beyond you, and that's okay. Like the idea is just like to be better than last year,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah. Good luck not having a non-native EMF affect your body. Good luck. Like we just there's a piece of this where it's like we have to control what we can
Mhm.
and just biology of belief our way out of the rest of it. And just also, I think one of the most important things we can do is constantly remind our body that we are safe and
Mhm.
that it is strong and it is resilient. Like we're not like
100%.
we don't want to have the mindset of like, oh, if this happens, it's going to be terrible. And you're like, that's not it.
And
Like
also to
we've all
have your
survived up
mind
to,
and to have
yeah,
your mind thinking just about that. I love this idea that you
yeah,
shared about the biology of belief. Yeah, like
yeah.
yeah, be
It's
positive, like be empowered. Like this is like to give
empowered.
agency. It's not to like it's not like for fear or like
Yeah,
analysis paralysis. Like that's the
yeah,
worst that can happen.
right. Exactly. So, okay, now I think let's go to summer and hit on those areas of food and deuterium, temperature, grounding, light, and sort of contrast with what we
Hmm.
just talked about with the winter because just as with winter, we were provided all these things, and then so as summer, we're provided with a new set of things to help us thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. Summer is actually the easy season because unless you're really miserable, like working all day inside of an office, like most people actually find it much easier to get some benefits from summer because you
Yeah.
essentially have the stuff that you're trying to produce in winter. You have
Hmm.
sunlight, you have a lot more sunlight, the day is longer, and a lot of people notice that their sleep improves, even if it's usually like slightly shorter because the day is
Mm.
longer. But the quality of sleep improves because you're able to like have so much natural light outside, and so your melatonin is less disrupted by light. There is like an idea of like intensity. When there is a lot of intensity of sunlight during the day, then your body is less like impacted by artificial light at night, and actually people don't
Yes.
even use it.
Hmm.
um, you're much more flexible from a foods perspective, but it's also like a season where you want to have a lot more polyphenols, a lot more like figgies and fruits because you want to
Hmm.
protect like the sun. I mean, like we love the sun, but the sun is harsh as well, and you need like
Hmm.
to prepare your body to be ready for it with polyphenols. Like the
Hmm.
fruits are full of them, and that's why like they come in that season.
Yeah.
um, so like the nutrition side is really, and actually like what I found with many of the clients I work with is that you need like people need to eat less during summer because we have so much energy that we get from other sources, from sunlight, from grounding, from just like spending time outdoors. And
Yes.
so there is like a less of a need of like high caloric food during that period
Mm.
of time. A lot
Yep.
more focus on fruits and vegetables. um, the light is really like the easiest part because of being able to access sunlight. I think the only challenge that many people have is that they still think that sunlight behind a window is the same as outside, and that's not the case. We know that you actually,
Yeah.
like, even if you have an office job, you have to actually get out, even if it's
Yeah.
5 minutes every, like, couple hours. That's more than enough. You have to get out and you have to, like, spend that time outside. um,
Yeah.
and
And I
yeah,
think
go ahead.
that people have a challenge because they were misinformed purposefully that the sun is dangerous, and especially to avoid being out in the sun during the peak hours. And I fight with ChatGPT on this AI program. I'm literally, it's like where I'm like, it's like all this content, it's like, and make sure to stay out of the sun in peak hours. I was like, if I do that, how would I ever get vitamin D? And it's like, you're right, blah
Absolutely.
blah blah, make sure you're smart about it. I'm like, enough, I'm done with you. But it's programmed to, it's like, even this robot is programmed to be like, stay out of the sun in the peak hours. If you stay out of the sun in peak hours, you will not get vitamin
The
D,
vitamin
because
D that you need, yeah.
yeah, it's only made from UVB light at a certain intensity.
Yeah,
So
in the
it's like,
UK, it's only after 10 a.m., like
yeah,
between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. If you don't go out at that period, which is usually like the period where the sun is
yeah,
highest intensity, then you don't get any of your vitamin D.
yeah. Or if you cover up, or if you use sunscreen, if you have sunglasses on, like,
Oh man, don't start me on that.
yeah. But that's, I think, people's challenge in summer is that they're like, "Oh, I'm outside all the time, but I always put sunscreen on before I go outside." And they're like, "And my vitamin D is super low." I'm like, "You're blocking yourself from being able to create it."
Actually, I was reading this article that thanks to people not knowing how to put on sunscreen the right way, that's what, like, saving us all. Is that, like, people literally, like, they put it and actually there are spots and then it goes out. It's go and that's what saves people. But yeah,
Yeah.
like, I think like, even if you believed that sunlight causes skin cancer,
Uh-huh.
sunlight is still positive for all cancers. Like, when you have less sun exposure, you actually have higher risks of breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, all of these,
Skin
like,
cancer.
and that as well, and skin cancer. and
Yeah.
and the funny thing is that, like, when they look at the data, it's not people who are always exposed to the sun that get skin cancer. I think what's challenging with our modern life is that our relationship with the sun is not healthy.
I
We're like,
agree.
we have a love hate relationship. We spend all the year in the offices not getting sunlight, and then we go
Hmm.
for a week and we get, like, sunlight
On
all the time. We
vacation.
burn, and we're
Uh-huh.
like, oh, so they were right. Well, of course, if you, like, if you never train for a marathon and then you go and do it, that, like, in
Yes.
one go, I'm sure you're gonna have some issues. So yeah, I think
Exactly.
that's the issue.
Yes, it's like building that solar callus in the spring is like the training. And this is especially important if you have light skin. If you're, a Fitzpatrick 1 to 3, especially if you're living closer to the equator than your ancestors were.
Mhm.
Me living here in Austin, and when I was in Miami, Florida, I mean, I have, my dad is of Italian heritage, but that's much more north than Miami, Florida. So, there were times where I found myself in the Florida Keys and I was snorkeling and I was really tan, but I absolutely put on some sunblock, like mineral based, because that intensity of the sun, my skin, because of simply like my
Mhm.
genetics, can't handle that.
Didn't
So I'm
match
not
it. Yeah.
so we're not up here saying never ever use sunscreen, there's never a place for it. That's not the case, because we've globalized. So we've moved all over the place. And so now people who have very pale skin are living in more equatorial regions, and they're at higher risk of having issues because there's a mismatch. And so it's even more important for those people to build a really strong solar callus, get the infrared, get the UVA, then get out in UVB for increasing amounts of time,
Mhm.
and then protect yourself. So, clothing, shade, sunblock, hats, like all of those things to prevent yourself from burning. But also, like you said, earlier, like bringing in more of the food piece and how, polyphenols from antioxidant rich fruits and vegetables, and, avoiding things like seed oils, which will oxidize and cause issues for us. So we've had this, like, our modern world is not set up to experience the sun in a healthy way.
Mm.
And like, I love how you said our relationship with the sun is not, it's inappropriate. We're like, we love it because it feels so good and we're on vacation, but we also fear it, and we're just, we're it's a bad relationship. So if we can respect it and
Mm.
give our bodies what they need and learn to like embrace all the different times of day, instead of just, like you said, just like go out and fry for a couple of hours. Like, that's not what we're suggesting
Yeah.
either, because that's irresponsible.
And
Right.
there, and there are really like two approaches to it. You can like be super specific about it and use the apps like
Hmm.
Dminder and all of these,
Hmm.
or you can also like believe in your body, and like there is like like everyone has like we're disconnected from this intuition, but everyone has this intuition where when like your skin will feel like it had enough sunlight,
Yeah,
and that's like a great time to actually like retire. And actually it's very important to like get as much sunlight as you can in the morning and in the evening, because these are like infrared, they're harmless. And actually the studies like there's like this great image I have in my head where they did like studies on skin, and when you put infrared before and after, the UV has a lot less of the, like the impact that people fear. uh,
exactly. I was laying out yesterday. We have a UV index of 6, and so I was out all day
Lucky you.
yesterday. Yeah, even though the temperature was not that warm, it's like beautifully
Mm.
warm in the sun. And so I was out for, a couple of hours yesterday, and I already have my solar callus going, maintained it all through the winter. But afterwards, because it was quite cold out, there's
Mm.
no way I could have stayed outside in a bikini at like 5 o'clock to get all that infrared. So I just used my
Oh
red light therapy.
yeah,
I just used my red
yes.
light therapy panel afterwards, and like, yes, my skin looked a little flushed yesterday, but that's a normal response. Like, we have
Mm.
an uptick of histamines and other, molecules in our skin to give a flushing response, so that we know, oh, it's time to get out of the sun. So when you use a red light therapy panel, like, you guys, if you ever have like too much sun exposure and you use that thing, it like sucks the burn right out. I mean,
100%.
there are definitely going to be burns that you could get that it will not fully recover from, but it's unbelievable when you use the sun the way, like, have you had clients where they're like, I've never in my life ever gotten a tan, and they're tan?
100%. I did.
Because
I
I
did.
have, yeah.
I also had like people who were always burning who stopped burning.
Yes.
And actually, like it's funny because like and actually like getting infrared before is even more important than after, because like you
Yes.
prepare your skin, and like and it's perfect like because it gives you a reason to wake up earlier.
Yes, exactly. Amazing. So, I feel like because you're here, I do want to talk a little bit about testosterone. I know it's sort of like out of
Hmm.
left field, but I do know it's something that you specialize in. So I want to take advantage. And,
Hmm.
looking at you through the camera here, you mentioned you were losing your hair, yet you have a full head of hair. So, like, this is someone, a member of my family is kind of going through some hair loss, and I mean, all the my my dad's side of the family, they're all bald. So, some of the men in my family don't really, I feel like they think they don't
Yeah,
stand a chance.
yeah.
But like, I don't know. I don't even know how to ask you a question about like hair and testosterone, but I just feel like whatever you want to tell me is going to be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think like it's all connected again, but I think that
Yeah.
if you look at images from before and then images now, like you do see that a lot of people are getting bald, and a lot of people are getting bald earlier.
Mm,
And interestingly enough, at the same time, people are losing their testosterone. So every decade, we lose 10% of testosterone globally, like overall. And so like that means that
wow.
people are like just they have less of those hormones, and at the same time they're getting bald. So it challenges some of the ideas or some of the beliefs that testosterone and DHT, which is, like the powerful version of testosterone,
Dihydrotestosterone, yeah.
exactly, uh, are at the core of balding and hair loss. But
Mm,
like, I think the bigger problem today is that we live in a world where, in addition to the fact that people have circadian disruption and
mm,
people have, like a lot of stress, like
mm,
stress is omnipresent for so many people. Financial stress, job stress, relationship stress. And we just like found this way of making ourselves and our lives hell, from, like, when you look at it in the grand scheme of the universe,
mm,
meaningless
mm.
things. Like, we've never been so secure, we've never been so, like, well,
Yeah,
like easily well fed, if you
yeah.
wanted, and still we stress so much. And then, in addition to that, you have this flood of electromagnetic fields,
Mm-hmm.
and in addition to that, you have this flood of like toxins, which
Yeah.
can be, I mean, like,
Xenoestrogens.
exactly, the xenoestrogen, but also the thoughts. Like, there are a lot of um,
Thoughts. Oh,
like there are a lot of thoughts that tell you, like, stay in your place, you don't have agency, and that, like, even those thoughts, they have impact on testosterone. So, like, all of this, like, magma of things mean that today, for a man and a woman, it's more likely that you're going to have hormone disruption than anything else. And I think for men, it really compounds, because for many, they almost feel like they have become useless to society, right? Like, you don't have like a place anymore. And so all
mm,
of this compounds to this low testosterone. I see clients that have like 300 in testosterone readings, when you should have like 700 to 1,000. And
mm.
doctors, they keep moving that range to, because the range is just like, what is the average that we see in
Yeah.
people, so they keep moving that range down. And, like, you can be 19, you can be 17 and have 300 in your blood reading for testosterone, and people are going to be like, fine, yeah, you can't, like, you have no energy, you can't have a sexual relationship, but you're fine. um, and so, like, this is really
Wow.
like the disconnect. And because it's like, I think healthcare does not think about vitality, it just thinks about, like, is there something serious, are people, like, are you gonna die?
Can we medicate you for
Yeah,
something?
yeah, exactly. And is there something, like, really serious?
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you're just balding, we're just gonna give you this.
Wow. So how do people increase their testosterone, and would these strategies also work for women?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, at the end of the day, it's not really testosterone. It's like, we speak about testosterone as like the easy way for people to understand, but at the end of the day, it's a balance of a lot of hormones.
Mm,
Your pregnenolone to start with, and then how you balance your cortisol with your testosterone, with your estrogen, with your DHT, with your aldosterone, with all of those other components. And when you have balance, when you reach balance, that's when you feel healthy, and that's when you're like it. Like,
mm,
so, some people, they take TRT, which is, like, replacement. You just inject yourself with testosterone,
yeah.
and, like, that's an easy way to increase testosterone. But you also increase your estrogen with that, and you also, like, have other issues. You shut down your pituitary, and like, your brain does not produce testosterone anymore. It does not produce, like, the
Whoa.
the
It
the, the
downregulates you.
FSH, yeah, the FSH and the
Your
LH, and so your testicles, they, like, shrink. It's like, it's such a, yeah, like, it's a wild
And that's what
world.
happens when you do TRT?
Yes, that's a wild world.
Whoa, I had no idea.
Yeah, you can have fertility issues from that, because your brain just shut down, right? And people, they have to stop TRT, and then, like, uh, go back to normal, to be able to have kids. Otherwise, like, they can't. So, like, there is this whole world. And again, like, we find the same patterns. Like, people want the shortcut, the
Yeah.
vitamin D in winter, the TRT for testosterone.
Yeah. So, okay, before you say anything else, this is going to be my guess. So, when I was struggling with my hormones
Hmm.
back in the day, um, I had polycystic ovarian syndrome. I was, like my hormones were messed up, and I couldn't get to the root of it by trying to address those hormones specifically. I was trying to like
Hmm.
raise my progesterone and blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't it wasn't working. And so then I found out that my metabolic health was at the root of it. And so I targeted my metabolic health. And with that, probably some circadian stuff. As if I had known about circadian rhythms, I would have done that as well. But all of that helped support my hormones, and I didn't have to touch my hormones. I had to work on stuff at the sort of this foundational stuff. Is
Absolutely.
that what you're going to recommend for
Absolutely,
TRT?
absolutely,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah,
It's it's
okay.
it's like it's like a lot of them. I actually, like when you work on your testosterone, you're just working your health, right? Like at the end of the day, you're doing the same,
You're
but
supporting your
with
body to do what it does. You're
exactly,
obviously replacing it's not working.
you
Yeah.
give it the right inputs. There is usually like additional stuff that we do to specifically support the like sex hormones, but the basics are the same, and it depends on like where you're coming from and your problem, but
Mm-hmm.
it revolves usually around the gut, because the
Mm-hmm.
gut is where you like detox a lot of the excess estrogen. It's where you detox a lot of the hormones, the
Mm-hmm.
thyroid, because the thyroid has so much interaction with your hormones and your hormone production overall, your metabolism, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then like everything around your leptin and like your insulin and like just does your body feel like it has abundance, or is it in a starvation mode? Because like
Mm-hmm.
no one makes babies when you're in starvation mode.
Yep.
um, yeah, and then your circadian rhythm, your sleep, your exercise, and then what
Mm-hmm.
type of exercise is going to support you versus hinder you, all of these things, and then getting into that mindset of balance. And I think that like again, like it all works together, because
Mm-hmm.
you can have certain amounts of hormones, but because you have more androgen receptors, that will be fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, in the cold, speaking about
Mm-hmm.
winter, in the cold, our hormones tend to go down, the
Mm.
testosterone, the estrogen. But at the same time, exposure to the cold increases androgen receptor frequency, or
Sensitivity.
exactly, concentration and sensitivity. And that means that you can get
Mm-hmm.
as much with less hormones. And so like we're looking at all of these things together, and at the end of the day, we
Mm.
need to feel good and we need to have everything in balance. So yeah, like you're right, it's
Love
it's
that.
founding it's mainly the foundations, and then a
Yeah.
few specific
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, that's funny because that's how I support my clients. We have a foundational approach, and it's not like, okay, if you're struggling with thyroid and, your iodine is like tanked, like, yeah, we're going to support you with
Mhm.
these different things, but that's not really where we do the work, so to speak. It's like we do the work in these other areas with digestion and gut health is my number one thing that I work on with people, even though that's not what I lead with, because good luck trying to stabilize your blood sugar if you can't digest fat and protein. Just good luck. It's not going to happen.
100%.
You're not going to get the nutrients you need to power your body. So we have to start there. We look at blood sugar and metabolic health and circadian rhythms, and that's where we do the work. So
Mhm.
it's like no matter what, people want to hear their symptoms. They want to hear, oh, this is going to help for my symptom that I have. But it's like the truth of it is that anybody could like do this work and experience huge benefits in every single area of their
across
health.
across across
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
And it actually makes this work even more powerful, because you're not like, this is what I always tell my clients about the testosterone programs, is that you're not doing this just for your testosterone. It's not TRT. You're not going to just like tick a box. We want to,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we want to make you feel great. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, we want to boost your testosterone, and at the same time avoid cardiovascular disease, and at the same
Mhm.
time feel great and have energy and focus, and all of these
Mhm.
things
And
come
sleep
in the
well and
package.
yeah,
Yeah,
like have a good libido and but like yeah, feel like have good mental health and have good
100%.
digestion, and it's not just like you said, you don't just get this one benefit in isolation. Like
Yeah.
everyone across the board is going to get these, broad sweeping improvements.
And I think like one of the things, probably you and I are like so much into the health space, that like when
Mhm.
like when I work with clients, like where they come from is so far, like that,
Mhm.
like we have to look at their environment, and the like just like what they use in their kitchen, what they
Mhm.
use in your um like taking care of their face and their like their body,
Personal care
etc.
products,
Exactly,
yeah.
like all like such basic things, and people still get them wrong. And so like there is like so much to gain from like working on the foundations. um
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just like you said at the beginning, when you're like, I started getting into nutrition, and then you start reading labels of your food, and then you start saying like, well, what am I putting on my skin, and like, what's in this frying pan I'm using? So that's like the tip of the iceberg, and that's when
Hmm.
it's like, okay, I got to buy new this and new this and new this, and like all these things start to switch over. Now we're adding light bulbs to the mix, and like it's just it can feel overwhelming to someone who's like brand new at this, and it's just like, oh my god,
Yeah,
but we all got here,
rightly so.
it's
Yeah.
and it's the idea is like, you don't have to change everything by tomorrow. If a soap runs out, go to ewg.org, environmentalworkinggroup.org. It's a good website to kind of say like, okay, I need new body soap, and
Hmm.
it's like, just type that in and it'll give you some that are way less toxic than the one that you're using. So it's like, you don't have to just throw everything out and quit your job. Like, that's not what we're suggesting. It's like, we could take it step by step, these little things. So where can people find you? We know that you're on Instagram, you create great content. Tell us more about your
100%.
programs.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram, the 360 upgrade. So the THE 360 upgrade, and that's where everything happens. You have my
Mm-hmm.
website from my Instagram as well,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I have my programs. I have a testosterone program, a gut health program, and then what I call frontier of vitality program, which is like all of this foundational work and how to really get there. Yeah, and I also do coaching specifically focused on gut health and testosterone.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. I feel obviously we're speaking a lot of the same language, and it's nice to see that this community is global, and that we can, circadian and quantum biology is for everyone everywhere on the globe, and it's not only for people who live in sunny places all the time,
100%.
and yeah, and that you can be healthy and have vitality and thrive in any season. And that, but just knowing that things may feel different, you're not going to feel the exact same in the dead of winter as you do in the summer, because you're just not supposed to. And so to embrace these differences, and to embrace the time of year where we can slow down, or embrace the time of year where we can get out and be more active and stay up a little bit later, and woo, and eat more
100%.
carbohydrates, and like, I think that it helps to see, this whole year, and how, oh, we are made to have this variety, and it gives us permission to do that in our own lives too, where it's like, okay, there's more light and there's more temperature, and I'm going out more, and I'm going to push myself hard in my workouts, versus winter, where it's like, you know what, I think I'm actually going to skip the gym and do a yoga class, or I'm going to do
Mhm.
a meditation. It's like, I feel like people don't give themselves permission to rest. Like, they're on summer mode, full throttle, and then they burn out, and then they go low leptin, So
Too
I
much
just,
guilt, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so, thank you for sharing all this information, so we can approach the seasons with a new perspective, and where we can know that we've been given all that we need to thrive. So thanks for being here,
Thank you,
everyone. Please
Daniel.
check him out on Instagram, go follow him, and yeah, we'll have to chat again soon.
Thank you.